Welcome everybody to our Enterprise Architect Trerado series. It's great to have you here today. Once again, we're going to be looking at the relationship between designer and collaborator. We're going to look at a donut chart that we've created in Collaborator, and then we're going to go back and, using first principles, we're going to design a diagram that will feed into that chart. My name's Scott Hebbard. I'm joined today by Stephen Maguire that's going to show us how to do it all. So welcome, Stephen. How are you today?
Thanks for the introduction, Scott. Very well, thank you. Let's make a start. So we are on the Enterprise Architect Trerado home screen. Two tools, Designer and Collaborator. So the Designer is where we're doing some of the the detailed work where we're creating models, importing content, making traceability between different elements in diagrams, and Collaborator, the tool for visualizing those things. But of course, also in Collaborator, we can update properties and text and things, and have discussions as well, which we can do in both tools. I am going to launch Collaborator first. I happen to have that open in my tab there, and also Designer, I have that open in the tab as well. So I'm going to flick over to the Collaborator tab, and Scott, as you mentioned, we have a donut chart in here representing the statuses of information elements. So again, kind of starting very high level up, we've had some videos on how to create a stakeholder mind map to get some information from the stakeholders about their concerns, and then we had a look at the stakeholders, and with respect to that, we looked at these
primary concerns and risks,
primary
concerns. The cards, yes.
The card. So we will move down now, and we're going to look at this donut chart. So here we have the donut chart, and you can see that it's reflecting the statuses here. So you can see some of them haven't got a value on them, and that's kind of quite common, Scott, in a real world situation. So they can be unspecified at the moment, but we've got proposed and validated and things. So let's now go and look at where this comes from inside the Designer tool. So we open up in Designer, we come to our home diagram, our navigation diagram, and we've looked at this before. We can click on these elements here, these navigation cells, and get a preview of what we're going to see if we were to click through. So these are actually buttons that we can click through onto particular diagrams and other content. So I know this my way around this model. Down here in the extended modeling diagrams, we have a list of particular types of diagrams. Just to put people in the picture, if they haven't been following the series, this is based on the Archisurance example model that the Open Group provide in connection with, like an annex to the Archimate standard. So we've extended that without breaking any of it. We've kept true to the word of that model and the Archimate language and framework. But the tool Designer is much bigger than that and much broader than that. So we're going to click through here to these extended modeling diagrams, and we come through into a list of them. We've got Porter's value chain, stakeholder analysis, requirements, organization chart, and things. So I've scrolled down a little bit too far there. We've got a class model here. If you're familiar with the Unified Modeling Language, the UML, you'll know that this class diagram is something that you're going to use to describe a domain early on. Now, you could use an Archimate business object for this diagram as well, but we're just wanting to show a number of different ways of doing this. I can preview that diagram, comes up, and it's a classic domain model, a class diagram. It's got elements. That's the one I'm looking for. So I'm going to click through on that, and immediately that diagram opens. And you can see that there are a number of entities connected with lines, relationships, and I can find this diagram in the project browser by selecting some blank space in the diagram canvas, or if I wanted to, one of the elements, and I can use the locate button to find the context item button there, and that moves down now, and we can see that we've got this diagram. Now you see that there's actually two diagrams here, Scott, and I want to show this as part of the Designer features, that we can look at this high level diagram as well, and that just gives a really simple view of the elements without you know, without too many of the notes or anything in there. I'm just going to tidy this one up a little bit. So very easy to kind of move lines around and things, and you can see that Designer is doing all that work for us as I move around. It's rebalancing that diagram, and there's obviously something here that we can launch a state diagram as well from this element. Yep. We won't do that at the moment. We're concentrating on the classes. So let's look at this diagram here. We'll go back and open up our detail diagram there, and you can see that we can move back there with that back pedal there. So I'm going to close this high level one, and we're going to look at this. Now, where did that information come from for that donut chart? Well, if we select one of these elements, you'll see that there are some properties in the properties window over here, and one of them is the status. So this customer has a status of proposed, and this is a normal sort of governance feature of the tool where we can, when we create elements, or when we're updating them, we can specify what their status is. And so this is proposed. We're not sure that we want that in our model just yet. That one's been approved. The payment is validated, and the agent is proposed. Now, if you look at this, Scott, it's interesting. We can move through this model, and it's been coloured by the domain. So we've got a legend that's driving these colours here. And, it's the domain that these things belong to. So if we look at that, the keyword there is policy in there, and that's what's driving it. So if I decided that the keyword wasn't policy, and I said, look, I'm going to put this agent into a different group, maybe it's into the product group, I can change that there and say, look, rather than policy, I'll put product there. And in that, you'll see that the diagram updates. Color changes, yeah. So let's put it back to policy. But what I want to show you as well is that we can base that on, we could do a similar thing with status, but here's our statuses. So we can see that they are different statuses, and that's what's driving that representation in the donut chart in Collaborator. Yep. So as always, I like to do things from first principles, and I want to show you how easy it is to create this diagram. And so let's do something, Scott. Let's just go and delete all of this content and start from scratch. So don't do this at work unless you're very sure as to what you're doing, because once this content's gone, it's gone from the model. Of course, you would have backups, and you might have baselines and things as well that can help you out. But just take some care when doing this. So I'm going to right mouse click on here and say delete selected items. And I'm going to say yes to all. And so those items will all be removed from the model. So now we're back to this. Now, what I want to do now is to create a UML class, a Unified Modeling Language class diagram. So I'm going to close this stakeholders one that I had open, and I'm just simply going to go with that package selected. I'm going to go new diagram. Now, this is one of the really amazing things about Designer, is the fact that you've got this ability to put things into perspectives. And so at the moment, we're looking at this complete architecture. When we look down, we've got all sorts of different things. We've created mind maps before, strategy maps, requirements, things. But we want to do a UML diagram. So we're going to go to the UML structural diagrams. And if you know that, that's classes and packages and component diagrams and things. So let's choose one of those, and we'll choose not a package, not an object, but a class diagram. And let's call this this information model. Let's call this one the domain model. Assurance domain model, we'll call it. Domain model, so we can give it a name. And let's get started, Scott. So I'll create that diagram. Now we've got a blank canvas, and if I now look at the toolbox, it's been converted into, or changed into a toolbox that's focused around the elements that are permissible to put onto a UML class diagram. Remember that the UML isn't doctrinaire about which elements you can put on. These are the elements that are most useful to go on, but you can add other elements as well. So let's let's now go and create some of our elements. So let's drag a class onto the diagram and let's call it customer. And as always, Scott, I want to put notes in there. So let's put some notes in, and let's put a policy in there as well. I'm just going to move to another screen. It won't be a minute. Go. And let's bring up that one. So, and let's do a policy. So we're going to say that customer can have policies. Now we can do that in a couple of different ways. I can just put create another class on there, but to show you how easy it is, I can just drop using this quick linker, just drop it out there and say I want a class and what type of relationship. I want an association to that relationship there. I can simply type in policy now, and we're good to go there. So just drag this out. You can see that these lines here, Scott, these alignment lines are doing this work for us. If we sort of go off there and we you know, haven't got it lined up properly, it will line it up properly for us. So with policy selected, I'm going to put some notes in there for policy, and I can label this thing. So you know, I can go over here to the properties window, and this isn't mandatory, and people do this different ways, but this is one way to do it. A customer purchases a policy. And the other thing is that if you know something about UML and then a little bit about UML, you know that there are multiplicities, which are commonly called cardinalities in other language, like in database language, but so they're called cardinalities. One to many and many to many, etc. Yeah, exactly. So here we've got the this source and target. So the source was the customer. I dragged from the customer, and I'm going to drop down that and say, look, one customer can have as many as any number of policies that they want. Now, I did some work for an insurance company, actually, Scott, that had a rule that a customer couldn't have more than 7 policies, and I think it was a limitation of some of their computer systems, some of their legacy computer systems that had that restriction in it. So you can set that in the tool to be 0 to 7, so a customer can have between 0 and 7 policies. Obviously, if a customer is just onboarded, they may not yet have a policy. You might onboard them first and then give them policies, but that's a business rule that you can decide upon yourself. So I'm going to change this back and say let's be a little bit more flexible in Archie Insurance and allow people to have as many policies that they want, and the stakeholders will be happy with that they're getting more policies and more revenue coming in. So let's do another thing here, and let's say that a customer can make a claim as well. So let's put another class in here. So I'm going to do it a different way this time. Rather than just dragging it in, I'm just going to I'll drag it onto the diagram there, and I'll call this claim. And hopefully you don't have to make claims on your insurance, but if you do, hopefully the insurance company honors that. And again, we can put a line in ourselves, and we can use the quick linker to do that as well. And I want it to be an association. And again, a customer files a claim, I think is the word that is generally used in insurance. Files a claim or submits a claim. And again, how many of these things can there be? Well, let's just say, look, in the source, there's going to be, one of them, one customer per claim, and go into the target and say, look, they might make any number of claims. And of course, the policy might be covering the claim as well. So I can put a link in between this. And we're starting to build up a story, Scott, and we go, okay, yes. That's there. And we say, look, the policy is going to cover a number of claims. So let's just put cover in there as well. You can see that this will eventually we'll get our model become quite large. And again, the target will be any number of those. So, quite easy to do. I can now look at doing this, putting the metadata in that realized that particular donut chart. Yep. So let's have a look at here. The elements are added with a default value of proposed. So let's leave customer as proposed, and let's put this one as being approved, and this one has been validated. So we've got a number of different things there. Now let's do that. And we've got our multiplicities in there. Now we can change our line types as well, Scott, if we want to say, look, let's make these line styles a little bit different. And I can go into my line style there and say, look, I want to do an orthogonal rounded style there, and that means that, and if I change these positions and things, it will change automatically for me. So again, I can just line those back up again. So you can see that's got that rounded edge on there. I can just change the other ones as well. Right mouse click on this and say apply line style to connectors of the same type, and now these ones are going to be changed as well. And if I drag this one down, you can see how Designer is doing all of that work for us, enabling us to move these connectors easily and reshape them.
Yeah.
So I can put waypoints in and out. I can just say, look, I'm holding my control key down now and deleting that one now, and now it's gone. The other thing is, Scott, that I could change the colors of these things as well.
Could you do it via a legend, like?
Yeah, well, that's right. Let's do. It's a great idea, Scott. Let's do it via a legend. So if I wanted to, I could change the colors and just go, look, let's make that a green color, and then I can make this one a different color. And so that will be there. But rather than do that, like you said, let's do something dynamic. I can use my undo key now. I'm going to undo that. So where is how do I put a legend on? Well, it's in the toolbox, and it's down here under the common elements. And so I've got a number of different elements there. I can put a text onto the diagram, and we can do a diagram legend as well. So let's just drag that on and just do it like any other element, put it there, and let's go to our legend tab there, and let's call this the status legend.
Yeah.
Give it a name, status legend. And now let's look at this. We need to do a filter and applies to. So what's the filter we're putting it on? Well, it's an element filter, and let's do it on the status, because that's what we to do. Now on the other one, we had it doing it slightly differently. We're doing it on the type, whether it was a policy or whether it was a customer or something like that. This one we're going to do on the status. So that's automatically there. Now what I'm going to do is put in what the value is. So I'm going to put in proposed there, and the display value I don't need to put in. That will work. And I'm going to say, look, let's make this one this kind of blue color there. I'll save that, and you can see that's coming up now in the legend. Let's do add new, and let's put another one in there, and I think we had validated. And let's make that a different color. We'll go for this green color there. Now we can always tone that down a little bit as well. It can be too bright sometimes, so we'll just put that in there and save that, and we've got that done. And let's put in one more for I think it was approved was the other one, so let's put new. Be careful not just to start typing over this, because you'll change your other one. So let's put this as approved, and let's choose a different color for that, and let's choose this orange, and again we'll pair it back to a slightly less bright color. Go okay to that and save that. Now you notice that nothing's changed on the diagram. The dynamic legend doesn't seem to be doing anything, and that's because we haven't set the apply auto color. And this is important because you might have multiple legends on a diagram, highlighting or coloring based on a number of different properties. So let's do that. We need to save that now, and there we have the dynamic legend in action. So let's just see what that looks like. If I went to here and said claim here and changed it to being proposed instead of that, then you see that it changes. Go to this one and change it to being validated, and we get the same thing. So Scott, that's what's going on with the status there. I'm just going to finish this diagram off, so just give me a minute or so to finish this off.
Thanks, Stephen. If we look on screen, I can see that you've now completed the class diagram. You've got your various classes with your attributes and the different colors for the classes. So perhaps you can tell us what you've done and yeah, see where we go from here.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Good to be back. So we have completed the diagram, and remember, this is like a domain diagram, something you would do early on in a project to get the idea of what are the important things in the domain that we're talking about. It wouldn't matter whether you're, doing something for insurance or search and rescue, or banking, travel. Any one of those domains will have the things that you want to concentrate on. So what are the particular things that are important in that domain? And in this one, we've got customers, policies, payments, claims, all sorts of things. The other thing we've added, Scott, which we didn't do prior, was I've added a number of attributes in here. So I'm just going to click on one of these attributes and you can see that they have all got notes as well. And I could go to my start ribbon and bring up from the All Windows panel and the Properties item there. And I'm going to bring up this Features window there. And you can see now that with that element selected, we've got all of these attributes that have been
all
put
the
in.
Attributes there, yes.
Yeah, and that's the same for all of these things. I haven't given them types at the moment. That's something that you might do as you're going along. We've got them for some of these elements, but other ones that we haven't. Let's just close our Features window there for a moment, or tuck that away. I can do that just by clicking on this little icon here to unpin it. The other thing that we looked at was we looked at our status legend. Now, in our original diagram that we show, we had a domain legend and status legend, and these are useful things, Scott. We created one from scratch there before, but we can actually store those up in a library in our repository up here, and we can use those legends on different diagrams. So we might have a different type of diagram, like a UML component diagram, and we could use that same status legend on that diagram. So just highlighting the reusability of that, Scott. So,
and when you've got two on screen, how do you make one active and not the other?
Yeah, great question, Scott. So let's have a look and see which one's active. If I look at this and I look at my properties, you can see that this property is proposed and that one is proposed. Yep. And if I look, a bit further down, all those ones are all proposed over there. This one here is a validated one, customer. But if I was to, change this one here to being validated or approved, and we change the color, I've changed that again, I've changed it to validated, and the color changes. So your question was about the legend, and so I can just select the legend that I want, and this is a status legend at the moment, and see over here on the properties window for the legend. I just clicked off that again. Excuse me. I've got over here that it's apply it to the diagram. So apply watercolor. So I can turn that off. And now if there's no legend associated, it will go back to its neutral colors, which is what you'd expect to do. Now I say, look, I want to apply the domain legend. And so I can apply autocolor there and save that. And now the elements that were colored by status are now being colored by the domain that they belong to. So the policy ones there and the product ones. So again, let's go back now. And now that we've completed this, go back and turn the full circle and go back to our model here.
Go back to Collaborator.
Right, Scott, here we are back in Collaborator looking at the Welcome to the Arc Insurance Home dashboard. Let's move down and have a look at the chart again. I've made some changes to the chart as well, just changed a couple of things around and changed some of the data. But we're looking here and we can see that we have got our status legend approved, implemented, proposed, and validated. And notice the colors are different to what we had selected in a Enterprise Architect Designer, but you can unify those colors if you want and choose your own palettes. I encourage you to do that. We can now look at this in more detail and view that. So we can look at the chart and the data that's driving this at the same time. So let's have a look at this red one here. These are validated. And so again, we come up here with a list. So by selecting the particular part of the donut, the list changes. And you can see that all of the green ones are proposed. So it's what you'd expect. All of these orange ones are implemented. But let's make a change now. Let's just say that some of our our proposed ones are going to be validated. So we'll select that there. Now, the list comes up here. They're all proposed. I can't at the moment edit that data, but that's not an issue. With the right permissions, I can come over here to the little checkbox over here and saying edit disabled, and I can click that one on. It's enabled. Now you'll see that I get the ability to update these. And so I'm going to make a number of these ones. This one's validated. This one here is going to be approved. And let's make this one here into implemented. And you can see now that we've got a smaller number of them that have been proposed. So again, I can refresh my chart now, and we can see now that we've
values have changed.
The values have changed. These ones have been validated, and the ones that we've got, as proposed, has gone down. That's a governance question, Scott. You can look at this now, and people can update things right here inside Collaborator. So even though you created the model in Designer, you can have all this input in Collaborator, and so we can see that there's complexity there. There's priority. We can put priority and add that, and so people will have permissions to update this information themselves, and we can show any number of elements here as well. So if we went into this one here, and I think we've got less than 10 at the moment, we can display 20 if we want to. The other thing is that we can decide to display particular columns. So the author, I've been the author of most of those. I'm going to turn author off there. That goes away. The type is going to be the same as well. I'll turn that off, and suddenly we get this much better and compact view. And I can again turn other things off if I want to. Say, look, I don't want to look at the documentation at the moment. I just want to look at these. And of course I can move these columns along and make them a bit more compact as well. So look, Scott, that's we did this round trip. We started looking at Collaborator. We started looking at this donut chart. We went to Designer. We updated the data, and you can see that the data looks nothing like this. The actual diagram looks nothing like this donut chart in Enterprise Architect. This is the view that we have, but Collaborator is showing that in a completely different visualization. So and this is just one visualization of one aspect of the element. We could have done all sorts of different properties on these elements and their attributes for that matter. So very rich, example, Scott, where we can see the power of using Enterprise Architect Designer to create these models, and you might import them, and then the expressiveness and for the visualizations in Collaborator.
And you've also shown how you can then federate out that data, and if you've got 500 staff, they might be really focused on status, and they can change the status themselves if they have the permissions to do so. So yeah, that's
exactly right, Scott. So many hands make light work, as they say. Like I said, we've got customers that have done that federated architecture, and they've got a small enterprise architecture team, maybe between 5 and 10 people, but they've got hundreds and hundreds of other people that are contributing to the models in that federated way. And the models that they see are curated. You can limit what someone has got the power to update. They might just be able to view it, but you can limit what they've got the privileges to update as well, down to a very, very granular level. So just particular properties. Maybe you say, look, they've got the right to update the status, but not the complexity, or vice versa.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, thanks for showing us that. To our customers, if you want to look at previous videos, we've demonstrated how to create various widgets for Collaborator and how to build up the models, or if you want to learn more about Enterprise Architect Trerado, you can check out the Sparx Systems YouTube channel for more information on all of these various topics. If you have any specific questions for Stephen, you can reach out via his LinkedIn credentials in the video description below. Thanks for joining us today, and as always, thanks very much, Stephen, for your work today. It's been greatly appreciated.
Always a pleasure, Scott.